Hey y'all, it's Chris from Frontsite. I want to take a few minutes to talk today about just a couple of different things I've noticed over the last 48 hours. So today I want to talk about one, the P320, the M17, and where I've seen it recently in the news and in person. Then I want to talk about how we as citizens or even former military or current military personnel and other individuals, maybe in leadership roles, really have this thing about role model worship, and how we take an individual and we put them up on this pedestal real high and we kind of worship who they are, not like in a religious sense, but more of a, this person can do no wrong. And when you have someone like that, especially those, bro vets or those guys that have done some high-speed stuff or been on some high-speed teams and really deserve our respect and our admiration, when they may come back and be less than honest with what their service actually was all about. So we'll talk about that for a minute. And I also want to talk about the unforgivable tragedy up in Minnesota that occurred this morning. As of this recording, it is late in the evening, or afternoon really, on the 27th of August. And this morning, 17 people were injured, 2 or 3 critically, and 2 children were killed during the first week of school. They were literally praying in church. So I want to take a minute to kind of talk about that. I did a video previously. I don't remember if I uploaded it yet or not. I may not, but I did talk a little bit about how to create make a soft target into a hard target, and some suggestions have come from that. So stand by. We'll talk about that on this episode and more. So the P320, I've seen it in a lot of different places. I've seen it on the news, on TV. I've seen it in person. Currently, the last 2 installations I've been on, both individuals that were at the gate were carrying the M17. I have seen it on the news, and I know that the soldiers currently from the South Carolina Army National Guard up in Washington, D.C. are currently carrying firearms, because that was a big deal apparently that soldiers carry guns. But they're carrying firearms, and they are carrying, for pistol, they're carrying the M17 as well. Some of them may be carrying the M4. I haven't seen that on the news yet, but that was the rumor that people were, oh my God, they're carrying guns or rifles and pistols. Well, they're soldiers and they're doing a security mission, part of them. So that's probably what they should be doing. Anyway, so yeah, I've seen it. So what do I want to kind of highlight with that? It's still being carried. The P320 or the M17 is still actively being used by our military. So just because it's had some issues, again, my previous video we talked about this, don't jump on the beat up SIG bandwagon and don't try to sell your gun right now. Let's give it a little bit more time, see what SIG does, and if they address the problem. I did hear, again, I haven't done any research into it yet. I do plan on doing that, finding out more about what actually happened to that airman that was killed. I hear that there was an arrest made in that case. Don't have any other details other than that, but it doesn't make any sense. I was talking to a friend of mine the other night, and it doesn't make any sense why a pistol would go off and kill the person that was carrying it. Again, if you go to the whole, because the person put it on the table. Well, did you put it on the table when it was loaded and you pointed it at yourself? That's a little strange. So I have some questions that I hope an investigation will uncover, and I hope we get that information. One of the biggest things that I hate about the military and the government in particular is they're not very transparent with anything. So if something comes out, they need to be a bit more transparent about it, and we should be notified, because again, knowledge is power, and if there is a problem with a tool, that needs to be fixed. If there's a problem with training or a lack of training or a lack of personal responsibility and accountability, that needs to be fixed. If there's a little bit of both, that needs to be fixed. And one of the reasons why I bring that up specifically is because I saw this picture and I thought, wow, the Air Force is allowing this. Now, I don't know anything about this airman. I don't know anything about this individual. I don't know where this picture was taken, other than it looks like it's probably on post somewhere on a base, probably a different gate. That's a problem, right? That's a lack of professionalism and a lack of discipline. What that also shows is the last decade, maybe less than that, of military time, well, the time in the military, where individual instructors, whether they be drill sergeants, drill instructors, whatever you call them, for basic training, have had their hands tied behind their backs. They're no longer able to enforce a standard and discipline. And I know they want to. I know they want to so bad. Why do I know this? Because I wore a black hat at OCS for 2 years, and I understand the need for discipline and instilling discipline in these individuals. Basic training, it was difficult, it was challenging, but it wasn't impossible. And what they do is they're trying to break somebody down, right? They're trying to take the BS of society out of you and rebuild you into a soldier, airman, Marine, whatever, a sailor, and make you into a team member, a good cog, a good reliable cog in that wheel. And unfortunately, sometimes we miss a few, and individuals like that get through the cracks. And it's incumbent upon us to really handle those issues and those situations appropriately. I hope that individual is disciplined. I hope they're no longer allowed to carry a firearm, at least for an extended period of time. Maybe make them a cook or something else. I don't know what you're going to make them, cleaning, whatever. I don't know. But something needs to happen. Discipline needs to be instilled in this individual, and they should not ever do that again. Now, speaking about accountability, I want to really talk about hero worship. And really, when we talk about holding people accountable, like that airman in the, this previous couple seconds, I want to talk about some of these individuals that claim to have done a lot of different things in the military, even though their stories may have been a little bit inflated. And I watched this video from a guy, VFT, I think it was, and he was talking about Shrek McPhee, Sergeant Major McPhee, who's a individual who claimed to be a Green Beret Sergeant Major, retired, did a bunch of crazy stuff overseas. I have no reason to doubt it. I don't know him. Obviously, he's the sheriff of Baghdad, SOB Tactical, I think, is the tag. But he claimed to have done a lot of different things, and when he was overseas. And this Valhalla gentleman, who's also a Green Beret, talked about and proved with paperwork from the DOD and the Army Personnel Office that the stories may have been falsified or blown up a little bit, and showed that he did some things that were a little less stellar. So why do I bring this up? Well, I just heard this, watched it mostly last night and into this morning, and I was really disappointed because a lot of times you think about individuals who talk about, yeah, I did this, I was in this stellar unit, this high-speed unit, I was this operator, and you think, man, they should probably be telling the truth, because in the military we're taught to have honor and integrity, and that kind of goes against that. And so, Tim Kennedy's name came up and what he did, and to be honest with you, I wasn't even paying attention to what happened with Tim Kennedy, nor did I even really care. I don't have that need to worship these individuals that have done something in the past that were SF or whatever, Navy SEALs, like the Jockos or the Pat McNamara's, who I actually really like, or the Tim Kennedys or whoever, the Shrek McPhees. I don't have the need to hero worship those guys. The guys I typically follow are the guys like Rich, like High, the Angry Cops, or like Nick from the Fat Electrician, those guys from the Unsub podcast, right? Those are the guys that I like, because they're more, to me, they're more human. They're more, like normal dudes I'd love to go have a beer with. That's the kind of guy I'd like to hang out with and just shoot the shit with. Not even talk shop, just to be around and just talk about the world stuff in general, right? Those are the kind of guys that I like to listen to and watch. These other guys, they really made a career, though, in leadership and how to do this, that, and whatever. And I've learned this because of my service overseas in the military and blah, 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 on this special operations unit. And it's great. And a lot of information that they have, I believe, in the leadership positions that I've been in, do currently, hold weight. But when it comes from something that's hollow, that didn't actually happen, that's when you have the problem. So we need to do better as a society at really kind of judging who these people are, not judging them, but making that determination to see if what they're saying is real, if it's reliable, and if it's realistic, and to see if it can be taken and have some weight put to it. So we need to do a better job. Also, military soldiers, right? I'm in the Army. Soldiers, we need to do a better job at policing ourselves. Airmen, sailors, Marines, same thing. We have got to do better at policing ourselves and holding each other accountable before things like that happen. And again, it takes away from the reliability of the rest of the force. Think about it from a law enforcement perspective, right? If you've never served in the military, or you've never served in law enforcement, but maybe you did serve in the military, one bad cop does something dumb, or one cop makes a mistake, what happens? People all across the country riot and protest and throw things at other police officers that had nothing to do with the incident, right? Like the Derek Chauvins of the world, who may have made a mistake, or did make a mistake, obviously, and things happened, and bad things happened, and now the rest of the country has to suffer because of something that one idiot did, right? So that's a problem. So we need to do a better job at policing ourselves. So guys, do me a favor, take the time when you go on these things, do your own research, right? You can listen to what they have to say, and you should do this with everything, with the news media, with people that we think have the right information. You should be looking at what they have to say and doing your own research. So take the time, do some reading, do some background checking. Google is your friend in some cases, right? So just take the time to do that and make sure those sources are good sources. So as a lot of you may already know, there was a tragedy in Minnesota this morning. 17 or so individuals were shot. 2 were critically injured and 2 were killed. The 2 that are injured are still undergoing medical treatment as far as I know. Again, it's later in the evening right now, and this happened around 9 or 9:30 this morning. Still a lot of information to gather about the incident. And what I hope I don't see is a lot of people taking the time to talk about why guns are bad. And that the biggest part of this is we really just need to sit back, do the investigation, allow that investigation to be conducted appropriately, allow the right information to come out when they are being transparent with, and when they need to be transparent with it. And we need to really identify the problem, right? We don't need to just say, oh, see, this is why guns are bad, or, oh, see, this is just a mental health problem in this world. It may be. It may be a mental health issue. It may be somebody who is pure evil just trying to do what they decided they wanted to do this day and create hate and havoc and kill people, especially innocent children. It doesn't get more innocent than 2 kids at prayer in the first or second day of school. It doesn't get more innocent than that. So we need to wait. We need to wait. We need to wait and see what they say about the investigation, what comes out, what doesn't come out, what they're not telling you as well. And then we can make that determination. But while it's being said, I did a video on making soft targets hard targets and how we could possibly take these soft targets like schools or like libraries or churches and turn them into harder targets. Now, what is a soft and hard target? A soft target is a target that does not have, say, armed security, right? Military installations are typically considered hard targets, but as you saw a few weeks ago, things can happen in a target such as a military installation like at Fort Stewart, Georgia. Things can happen, right? So one of the suggestions that I hear, and I watched this comedian kind of tear it apart, is obviously having people that are armed inside of these soft targets. So in military installations, at least in the National Guard, at armories, and again, just in South Carolina, as far as I know, this may be elsewhere as well, but we do have soldiers who are full-time that carry guns. And they carry guns because they're part of a program that they shoot and qualify every year. They're trained to handle it, and they're supposed to be the ones that respond to a threat if something were to happen on armory property, right? So I think that's a good thing. I think that's one way to step up that. When I was a commander, if you were in law enforcement in the state of South Carolina, and you were in law enforcement, you were allowed in my armory to carry a firearm. Why? Because that just increases the amount of people who are trained and proficient in that firearm and can defend the rest of my soldiers from harm. God forbid something happen. Now, when the thing comes up, or when the issue comes up about schools and people start saying, well, you should arm the teachers, I don't disagree. But I'm not saying you should arm all the teachers. And I've heard people say, oh, well, why don't we just arm the students too? That'd be a great idea, right? Yeah, that's stupid. And you're turning an argument into a joke. And the idea isn't to joke around about something like that. The idea is to come up with a solution and solve the problem, right? The problem isn't gun violence. The problem is violence. Okay, they just use a gun in a lot of these circumstances as their tool of choice. So how do we stop an individual who is evil, who has the intent to commit murder inside of a school, a church, wherever? How do we stop that from happening? Well, you stop it by deterring it, first of all, right? So let's try to deter it as best we can. Well, let's allow individuals that are parishioners or that are part of the school to carry firearms, and let's make it be known that individuals who you may not know who it is may be carrying firearms inside that building, whether it be the school or church, right? If they're carrying and you don't know who they are, you're probably less likely to go in there. You're going to go into a place that doesn't have security, right? If you're the bad guy. That's the idea, to deter that. It's not just to park a police car up front. It's not just to have a police officer in the school walking around. One person with one gun is not much of a deterrent, okay? And you say, well, we're going to arm all the teachers. No, you find out which ones have a background, either in military or law enforcement background, or you find out those that are capable and competent and want to carry to protect those children, right? Because you're not just saying, I need you to carry this gun. What you're saying is, I need you to be comfortable carrying this firearm, because if something bad were to happen, you're the one we're going to look to go to the bad guy. That's what you're asking them to do. It's not just carry the gun. Okay? They have to have a specific mindset that when shots are fired, they're not running away. They're running towards the fire. That's what we in law enforcement are trained to do. That's what we in the military are trained to do. That's exactly what you should be doing if children are present and shots are being fired. You should be running towards the gunfire to stop it as quickly and effectively as possible, whatever that is. So we should be finding out which individuals have the predisposition to wanting to take the fight to the enemy, right? You may have some teachers out there that are completely against it, and that's perfectly fine. But you may have some teachers that are like, you know what? I'm going to take that responsibility on. And I think those are the ones that we need to train. Allow them to train with their local law enforcement, if that's a good idea. That may not be. But allow them that opportunity. Give them the training. Give them the tools. Allow them to go to the range, and preferably with law enforcement of that jurisdiction, maybe, and work it out, right? Allow them to get that training. That's one way. The other thing we got to talk about is really identifying, yes, is it a mental health issue? Well, anyone that has the notion that I want to go kill children, yeah, there's probably something wrong with them, and they probably need to be checked. In fact, they probably don't need to be walking the streets. And I've worked in law enforcement for 19 years. I have met my fair share of people that have mental health issues. Some of them are well beyond the help that we can give them. Some of them are just unfortunately having mental health crises and need to be properly medicated, and maybe they just can't do it themselves. They need some help. So there are ways to kind of weed through that. But our mental health providers, the mental health industry, right, needs to step up a little bit more. We have had a lot of great success, at least in the Low Country, Charleston area, with some of our mental health providers helping out with first responders specifically, right? That's going very well, and I'm very happy to say that you know, the suicide ideations and things are being addressed more frequently, at least with our organization. But we're still having a hard time in the state and in the country with people that are just having mental health issues, and that might be homicidal or might just be homeless on the street because they can't hold down a job. So we need to do more as a local and state communities, not the government, not the federal government, but local and state communities need to do more about that. You know, JFK had it right. He said, you know, this is not a federal government issue. This needs to be a localized issue. And that's why he shut down all the federal and mental health institutions. That, and they were doing some improper things, some wrong things. But the idea is there that the states need to take charge of their own areas, their own jurisdictions, and run their own, right? And all the states have just kind of failed. So we need to do a better job everywhere. We need to get these mental health institutions back up and running. We need to get the right people in them to make sure that we can provide the right amount of care and the right type of care for these individuals. And we need to be able to identify them sooner. Like if I go to a call and it's for an individual who might be having some type of suicidal or homicidal ideations, and they get seen by a provider on a little, you know, tablet, and that provider says, I don't think I have enough. But do you not? Like, you should take our opinion as well as law enforcement officers. We are not going to tell you, oh yeah, this guy's crazy. He needs to go to the hospital. We've obviously got called to the scene for this reason, and it's probably bad enough that we called EMS to come check them out. Probably bad enough that they might need to go, at least be seen in person by a mental health professional. And if at that point it decides that it's not necessary, then maybe then they can go about their business, right? So I think it's a twofold issue. We need to make hard targets out of these soft targets. We need to talk about ways to do that. And we really need to hold people accountable for their actions. And we need to make sure that we can address this mental health problem a little bit more than we have in the past. So I know it was a lot. There was a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the world recently, and it's been a little while since I've put up a longer form video. But I appreciate y'all tuning in. If you learned anything from this, leave me a comment, like the video. I appreciate it. If you want to follow me, hit subscribe. That helps out as well. With the last video on the SIG, the first big one that I did on SIG, I got a lot of followers out of that, which was great. It's really good to see everyone just wanting to find out more information. If you want to talk about something, please put it in the comments. If you want to go back, I check the comments and I reply to as many of them as I can. So if you want to talk about something, I'm happy to see it in the comments. If you want me to discuss something, please leave it there and I will do my best to do that. I appreciate you tuning in. If you want any kind of merch like this t-shirt, right? I'm sorry, I'm sweating a little bit. It's really nice outside, but it's really hot in the shed. So, but if you want something like this t-shirt, or if you want something like a hat or a hoodie, because it's getting to be fall weather, you know, you can look this up on our website at www.frontsiteapp.com. Check out our merch store. But while you're there, make sure you hit the notify me button, fill out the form so you can be notified when we do go live with that app. You can be the first one or one of the first ones on the app to test it out for 2 weeks before we go live nationwide. So that is happening sooner than later. I'm hoping, I've said this before, I'm hoping to have the web version ready by Friday. So if that happens, you will see it out there. Just make sure you go to the website at frontsiteapp.com and sign up for more, and so you can be notified for more. Well, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one. Welcome to the revolution. Welcome to Frontsite.